Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today, Deborah Chalk. Welcome to Imperfect Momming.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm so pleased to be here with you today.
It's very exciting. So tell us a little bit about you and who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, I live in Oxfordshire in England, and I am a life coach. And in particular, I help parents and in particular moms to be the kind of parent they want to be without running on empty. So I'm a parent myself. I have one daughter who's age 11. And before being a parent, I was a teacher. I had a class of 36 children in my first year of teaching. And so I thought I didn't think it would be a huge challenge to be a parent, but actually being a parent is just on a whole different level. And although teaching is very challenging and having a class of 36 is again very challenging, it's a completely different thing being a mom.
Yeah, I genuinely don't know how my mom did it. She was a teacher for 30 plus years and had 4 kids. And I'm like, how can you be with kids all day and then come home to more kids?
Yeah, what an incredible woman she was or is, That is amazing.
And we all like really love her and think she did a good job. So it's not even
Oh,
like
she did. She did. Yeah. Fantastic. That's what we all hope for, isn't it? We all
it is.
hope that when our kids grow up, they'll say, you did a good job.
Yeah.
I enjoyed my childhood.
Yeah.
I still feel bonded with us and still want to do things with us and go for days out and have all of that fun times. That's what we all really hope for.
I agree. And when you're running on empty all the time, it's really hard to have that connection
Yeah,
with your
yeah.
kids.
This is right, because when you're tired, you just don't have the same bandwidth, you don't have the same patience, you don't have the same amount of calm, and your children absolutely pick up on your energy. From the moment you get up in the morning, they know, just with their magic intuition that they have, because they're still tuned into their intuition,
Yeah.
and they're able to tell just how much juice you've got for the day ahead. They just know. So a lot of what I do is helping parents so that they're not getting to the stage where that tank is consistently running on empty. And I think that that can be done through connecting your mind to your body, so that you're not just all up in your head with all the worries and the I need to do that and the schedules and the pressure. And instead, you're actually able to come into your body, feel like a whole person, feel like a human being, rather than just somebody who does the washing and the ironing and the shopping, and to feel like a person, and to be able to follow your own intuition, to follow your own inner guidance, and use that. Because I think as mothers, we have a tendency also to question ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
There's so many people in the culture telling us how they think we should be mothering, or judging how they think we're mothering, when they're just seeing the outside. They're not seeing the whole picture. They don't know how tired the child is. They don't know if they're poorly. They don't know if they have special needs. and they're making a judgment on us as moms.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's about you trusting yourself enough to know, yeah, I'm grounded. I know that I'm doing the best that I can. I know that I can, I'll certainly, I'll still read parenting books, or I'll still read and get ideas from people. It doesn't mean that you close yourself off to that completely. But even if you read all the parenting books, I mean, how do you know which is the right one to follow? You
Right.
know?
You have to
So
pay
that
attention to your kid. Like your kid is different than the one that they're described than is described in the book, and so you
Oh,
have to.
that's so right. That's so right. So what works for one child, and you think, oh, but their child always does their homework and never complains, and they always seem to be so neat. But you don't know what's going on for that child. You don't know what's going on in that family. We're comparing ourselves with people's shiny Instagram pictures of what their things are like.
Yeah.
They're often not true. But even if they are true, and some of those lovely moments you see online will be absolutely true. The child will be settled, the child will be having fun, and that's beautiful. But just because some other person's child is having a wonderful, easy time doesn't make you a bad person and doesn't make you a bad mother.
Right. And you mentioned, actually, there's a video on Instagram that I just think is hilarious, or it's an advertisement that I see on the video game that I play on my tablet. And the mom, I've never listened to it, I've only watched it. And the mom has the baby in her hand, and then the baby climbs down her leg, and then she's still talking and she's looking at the kid, and she's talking and she's looking at the kid. And then all of a sudden she darts over, she's still recording, and grabs him. I'm like, if that's not the most real parenting moment, I don't know what is. And but you mentioned children with special needs, and my son was diagnosed on the spectrum. And I remember there was a video. I don't remember any of the details of it. I just remember the feeling that I got and the judgment that I remember seeing. And there was I think that the child in the video was having a meltdown, and they were on the they had to have been on the spectrum, or some kind of um whatever it's called. And um man, I just lost my train of thought because I couldn't think of the word. But I remember there was judgment, and I think the caption of the video was, "This is what happens when you don't say no to your kid." And I'm like, no, this is what happens when you say no to your kid. Like,
Yeah.
when you're like, that's not a spoiled kid. I think that was the title, is that kid was spoiled. That's not a spoiled kid. That's a kid that heard no and is probably on the spectrum of some kind.
Sure.
And it just irritated me. Anyway, we'll move on.
So when you feel that judgment, do you still have that coming up, and how have you coped with that? Like, do you have friends that you have children that also have problems, and that kind of thing helped? I mean, how do you separate yourself from that judgment?
I feel like I have a unique set of circumstances. Most of us do, but I grew up as a pastor's kid. And so I always felt like I had eyes on me and that I needed to behave a certain way so that I didn't make my dad look bad. And
Yeah.
so when my son was growing up, and we were learning each other, and I was learning how to leave the park without a meltdown. I remember
Yeah, I've been there. Oh, there's some biggies there, aren't there?
I
Yeah.
just I just remember, like, okay, we're going home, and it was just, I'm going to fall to the ground screaming, and then I'd pick him up, and when their body just goes stiff as a board, and you're like, get in the stroller. And then I'd strap him in, and he's trying to get out, and I'm just like, what are people thinking of me right now? And then we got out of that phase. I learned how, Okay, 5 more minutes, 2 more minutes, 1 more minute.
Oh, I've been
Oh,
there. Yeah, the countdown. But
right.
sometimes even the countdown stuff doesn't work either, does it?
It always seemed to work with him. And then the program that I was in that really, really helped me was they, and I didn't like that they did this. They always gave him a treat. They always gave him a snack. They always
Yeah.
gave him, it worked though. So it was like, I've been able to get him off the sweet tooth from it. And at one point I was like, hey, I'm the adult. I can tell them what they can bribe him with. I don't mind if it's bribing with food. Why does it always have to be gummies or jelly
Yeah.
beans? Like, can't we
Yeah.
give him fishy crackers, which I guess are just as
Yeah.
bad? But yeah, so to continue answering that question, like once that was done, I also noticed that I had this crazy ability to be totally calm when someone else is around.
Yeah.
And I was less calm when I was
Mm-hmm.
alone, when it was just me and him. But for
Mm-hmm.
a long time, I would have people compliment how patient I was with my son, and just
Mm-hmm.
internally thinking, I'm so not, I if you could only see me when I'm by myself with him,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
that is self-judgment as well, isn't it? That you're comparing, oh, this standard that I'm able to do it at over here is really good, but it's a bit messier at home. And that itself is self-judgment.
Right.
And I think that this kind of noticing as a mom, when you're judging yourself, and kind of even just to say to yourself, oh, there it goes again, there's the judgment. And you can just almost like imagine, so in ACT therapy, which comes from the work of Russ Harris, there's a book called The Happiness Advantage.
Mhm.
And he says you can step back from the thought by first of all saying,
Oh, your sound cut out.
sorry,
Say that again. You can
yeah. So you can separate yourself from the thought or the judgment by first of all, you say, I'm
mm,
having the thought that I didn't do that well, or I'm having the thought that I didn't have enough patience. And then step back a bit further from it by saying, I notice I'm having the thought. So I'm noticing I'm having the thought that I didn't do that very well, or I'm noticing that I'm feeling that I didn't have enough patience. And just allowing yourself to kind of just be in the noticing of it. And then a lot of the stuff that I do as well is about helping parents to feel their feelings, because like being with a child when they're having a big huge meltdown is hard emotionally, and then you have to carry on with the day after that, because you've got the rest of the school run, or you've got the rest of the making the dinner, and we tend to just package all of our feelings
mhm.
away. And so a lot that we can do as well is about helping you to be with your feelings and helping you to hear the messages of your feelings. Because what can happen is if you're constantly just shoving your feelings down, it can actually lead to, real like a dis-ease within the body, and stresses within the body, just because you're constantly pushing your own emotions down. So that's about the parents' emotions. But one thing that helped me with the child's emotions was seeing them as being like weather patterns coming through.
Hmm.
So when, we had some big things about leaving the park, and, they were like huge storms. And just thinking, this is this weather pattern coming through, and this weather isn't going to last forever. And it might feel like it's going to, and sometimes it does. Sometimes it feels like, you're never going to be able to get them in the car seat, and you're never going to get home, and all of that. But just to realize that this is a weather pattern going through.
Hmm.
So it's like, hang on, and the weather pattern is going to go through, and you can be there with it, and you can be there caring for yourself and caring for your own emotions through that, to come out of the other end with you still having that um, acknowledgement of yourself as a good person, and also an understanding of your child just going through what they're going through. So much of the time it's not them trying to be difficult or trying to make things difficult for you. It's about they're hungry or they're tired or they're thirsty or there's, something going on at school that you don't know about yet, or
Yeah.
just those kind of niggly stages where children are finding their place within a new peer group, stuff like that. We can, we try as, parents to know a lot about what's going on for our child individually, and we talk to them about it, we ask them about it, but we can never fully know their own human experience.
Right. I really like that concept of the emotional storm, because it makes it feel temporary, because storms don't last forever.
Yeah.
And I remember someone asking me, and I felt this was really impactful. They asked if I'm taking responsibility for my son's emotions. And I realized that I was, but I feel like he's not the only one I did that with. There's been several people in my life where I was taking responsibility for their emotions. And sometimes it's because, and I'd say all the time, it's because I just want them to be happy, because I feel their energy
Mm-hmm.
and I just want to be happy. And when
Yeah.
I'm around people that are not happy, then
Mm-hmm.
I don't get to feel as happy.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I love that you said was the thoughts, that and separating you from your thoughts. And the first time that I really heard this type of concept was, separating your identity from you. Like, we have different identities that we create as self-protection, but that self-protection isn't us.
Mm.
That self-protection is protection of us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same, that we are not our thoughts. Our thoughts happen inside of us. And it really helps to isolate those thoughts, because I think we actually talked about this in my last podcast, was that we have like 80,000 thoughts a day, and
Yeah.
85% of them are on repeat, and they're mostly negative.
Yeah.
But when we're able to slow down the thought and think, I am currently thinking, or you gave another example of how to
Yeah.
do
I,
it.
I'm having the thought and then I notice I'm having the thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But,
So that comes from the work of Russ Harris.
mm-hmm.
And then I just realized also the idea of the name of calling it storming comes from a parenting coach that I love the work of, called Lisa Smith. And she talks about children storming. And I just thought, that's such a great idea. And it was from that I now think of it as the weather patterns. So I
Yeah.
want to just, give her a shout out for that. The thing you said about picking up on emotions, I mean, that's all about being an empath. That is about being, so we're not just moms. Then you have being a mom, and then onto that, you can add your own empathetic nature. You might add on your own sensitivity. You might add on your own introversion, or you might also be adding on your undiagnosed special needs that a mom has had, a mom who's maybe, because nowadays there's a tendency that they find out the special needs more often because schools and things are testing. But for our generation as moms, a lot of moms weren't being tested for things. And so you've got not just being a mom, but you've got then that with all the extra things coming in, the introversion, the sensitivity, the being an empath. And so all of this means that it is a big emotional journey for you. And so, I mean, that is, for me, I'm a sensitive person, I'm an empath, I'm an introvert. My child is not as introverted as I am, and so there's there's things. She's much more adventurous and much more adventurous physically than I ever was encouraged to be. I was very much wrapped up in cotton wool and told, don't go and stand up on that in case you fall down and all of that. And so you've got all of these new challenges that come out just from who you are as a person, never mind all the things that your child brings to the equation.
It's complicated.
And sure. So what we're looking at there is, that everybody's bringing all their own humanity to the relationships with all of the challenges that they have personally and that they've had individually. And then they've got that then in relationship with other people. So when I'm working with a mom, what I'm looking at is helping her to resource herself through being able to deal with the mind gunk, the negative thoughts that I'm not enough, that this is too hard, that their child is managing, why is my child not reaching this centile rate or whatever, all of the mind stuff, all of the negativity that comes up. And then to deal with the feelings that we talked about, feeling the feelings within the body, actually feeling those as patterns of energy within the body, and actually helping the mom protect her own energy and feel grounded and centered so that she can be more steady through the day and steady through all the challenges. And then also helping them to listen to their inner wisdom. And what happens is the more you connect with your feelings, the more you're able to be within your body as well and actually feel what's going on within your body and be embodied, the more your inner wisdom comes up. Yeah. And you start to get ideas. And these ideas don't just help in your motherhood, they then help in all the areas of your life. So they help in what you're going to do next in your work, or what you're going to do next in your business, or when is the right time to do that thing in your house that needs doing. And you start to trust yourself.
Yeah.
And that is a really different way than from how I certainly used to do it. I used to think that if I read enough self-help books, they would sort me out.
Right.
They would tell me how to do it, and what, that was what got me into coaching in the first place. And then you find that your personal answers, they're not all in the self-help books, they're in your own deep inner wisdom. And that's what I love, is helping people to get to being able to listen to that, to find their own way forward.
Yeah, I feel like I should have been taking notes while you were talking, because it's like, yes, 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 all that, all of the things, right? And I just wrote a blog at the time that we're recording this. I wrote a blog about, I think I was talking about the podcast. I think it was to let people know that I was launching a podcast. And it was like, we are raising tiny humans when we haven't really figured out how to human ourselves. And now we have to teach a tiny human how to human.
That's so true.
It's like, well, and all of the things that you mentioned, not only are we dealing with, I think everything that you mentioned is me, with the exception of the introversion. I've always been the outgoing one. I sound more like your daughter. But my son is the adventurous person, like your daughter is. And I really allowed him to foster that, where, yeah, I was terrified of him climbing on this rock, but I knew that I was standing right there. So if he did slip, I could grab him. And I think it gave him more of a sense of adventure and trust in himself, that he can climb anything. He's a little friggin' monkey. And and he's never fallen. He's fallen out of a tree once, maybe twice, and it was because the branch broke. And and now that I think about it, he hasn't climbed a whole lot of trees since then. It might have soured him on climbing trees, but it's also been summer since that happened, so we don't spend too much time outside.
Yeah. but he's getting to know his own limits, and he's getting to know what he's capable of, and you're allowing him to stretch
Right.
that and see how far he can go. Like my daughter was doing knee slides down a hill, like really, really fast, like running for it and then doing a knee slide. And I said, how do you know how fast you can go and it still be okay? And she said, I just trust it. I just trust myself to
Mm.
know how fast she can go. And then one time she tried to just bounce onto the grass, and it's like, oh, well, that one doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because gravity is not our friend with that one. But I just think, isn't that wonderful if they can learn to trust themselves through playing in those kind of outdoor situations and climbing and all of that. I think it's wonderful.
And I
Yeah.
don't know why I had this idea that that fear is taught and not something that we're born with. And so I'm afraid of heights, and so is my dad. And so I feel like I learned that by watching him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm terrified of spiders, which I'm pretty sure I was born with that one. But both his dad and I are scared of spiders. So that was an interesting marriage because in my worldview, the man squishes the spider.
Yeah.
But we didn't discuss this before we got married. So um anyway, when I would watch him climb stuff, I would just watch him like he's not afraid at all. He
No.
is so confident in the fact that he's not going to fall, that he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
fall. And
Mm-hmm.
until he heard his dad say, I'm afraid of spiders, he was fascinated with spiders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now he's been bit by a couple of spiders, so he absolutely hates them. He's no longer fascinated by them and is afraid. But in the beginning, he wasn't afraid, and I always tried to foster that curiosity, even though I'm like, please don't touch me, spider. um
I did the same. Yeah, I did the same. It's like, oh, so, spiders aren't going to hurt you, especially in the UK. Unless you're in a zoo looking at a poisonous spider, you're fairly okay.
right.
And I got her just like, oh, it's a spider. And she loves all creatures. And so we ended up for one birthday buying this spider soft toy, and she called it Rosie, and it was just like a tarantula.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the woman in the shop was terrified as she was wrapping up this spider soft toy who called Rosie. And my daughter's so excited about Rosie, the toy spider. And you're so right. We teach our children what to be brave about, and similar, we teach them what we're scared about. They think also, well, maybe if mom's scared of that, maybe I need to be scared of that too.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean to say that you have to push all of your own emotions or your own fears or your own phobias away. And certainly if there's any of the listeners who have phobias like that, reach out and get the help that you need for it. Absolutely. But just where there are things that you can be positive about and be confident about, you can show your positivity and confidence. And also where you don't need to make a big thing of being less confident, then think about whether it's going to help or not. For example, I hear about a lot of parents who the math homework will come home and they'll say, oh, I was rubbish at math at school, I hated maths at school. And then what your child is then learning is, oh, maths is something to be hated and it's something that you can be rubbish at, rather than it's just something that you can, like Carol Dweck's mindset book, she's talking about, it's not that people have an innate ability for things, it's that they just have the the enthusiasm to keep learning about it, and that they're going to put some time in learning about it. It's not about I think Angela Duckworth has a book called Grit, and that's about you
Mhm.
just decide that you're going to go for something and you work towards it. So
Yeah.
it's not about innate abilities to do things. It's just, do you have the openness to explore something?
Yeah.
And hearing messages like math is something I was never good at, close the book on that, is not necessarily going to be that helpful.
Yeah. I think I might have to pick up that book, Grit, because I know that one of my downfalls is that if it's not going the way that I want it to, or I'm not seeing the results that I want to see, then I'm like, I'm done. And so that might be a good book for me to help me change that, and then I'll stop, and then it'll help my son stop doing it because I see him
This is
doing it too.
something I've been learning, is like we can do hard things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we can do hard things. Like there's sometimes we tell ourselves, oh, that book's too hard for me, it's too intellectual for me. I say this, and I've done like high level English studies, and I used to see a literary fiction book and think, oh, that's too hard for me. We can tell ourselves things are too hard for us, or we can actually just give it a go.
Right.
But I also think, Alicia, that you might read the book Grit, and I don't think it's all about hard work. I really don't. I think there's so much importance to being able to rest and play. And I think that when you allow yourself to rest and play, you can have more magic in your life. And
Yeah.
that's also something, I did my second coach training with Abigail Morgan,
Mm.
and she teaches something called the slack process. And it's all about, being more relaxed, taking more time for play, being kinder to yourself. And from that almost like cocoon, yummy rest time, you get inspired and you get playful and you have delight and you enjoy the time with your kids more. So certainly when I work with people, I'm not encouraging them always to be, having that grit and working all the hours, because I think that play and delight and rest can just be amazing things
Yeah.
for moms. Even carving out little micro rests or micro plays, as Abigail calls them.
Yeah.
That can be just like nipping to watch 5 minutes of Netflix before heading back to
Right.
be on the job.
And I really spoiled myself several years ago, where when I decided that if it doesn't bring me joy or make me money, I'm not going to do it. And I actually revised that statement about a month ago, because inside that statement implies that making money has to be not enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And so now like I said, I'm a little spoiled, where if it doesn't bring me joy, I don't do it. And that doesn't mean that I don't clean my house and I don't do laundry and I don't do the dishes. I've learned to reframe those
Mm-hmm.
to be things that I enjoy, because I learned, in the first year of my current relationship, that my boyfriend's love language is acts of service. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do the dishes. I know. Let me tell you, my love language is gift giving.
Yeah,
Unless,
I do that one.
unless I don't have any money, and then it's acts of service. So I spent a lot of money on him on his first birthday. That, I mean, to me it was a lot of money, um and it was kind of shrugged off, and it was not received the way that I was expecting it to be received, because in my mind I was like, I spent this money on you, that your birthday is special because I thought about it all day and I spent the money, and so now your birthday should feel special to you. And that wasn't how it was received. And this was our greatest, I think this was the first and most greatest moment in our relationship, because it was kind of the first air quote fight that we had. And we discussed it at length. We still discuss it
Mm-hmm.
about things that we learned from that disagreement. And the next birthday, I didn't spend a dime. I did all of his chores, and I made him dinner and I made him a dessert. And
Mm.
I did it the day before his birthday because I figured, on his birthday, he's probably going to end up working really late. He ended up working really late on the day that I did it too. But
Mhm.
it was so much more well received
Wow.
than the financial gift.
Yeah. Well, first of all, how thoughtful are you to do that? That's lovely.
Thank you.
So thoughtful. Second, I completely get it because I used to do the gift giving because that's one of my love languages. And, they just did not land. It just did not land. And my husband is also acts of service. And I wouldn't be getting the fact that the fact that he did that thing was actually a sign of love. I just go, oh, he's done that thing. But now I have an understanding that that is his love language. It helps you appreciate them more.
Mhm.
And this is also really interesting, Alicia, because I've read Gary Chapman's book about the 5 love languages. I've read that book and I really enjoyed it back when I read it. And the other book I found really helpful was the Gottman's book about the relationships, and it's something like the 7 ways of making marriage work.
Mm.
And it talks about helping, the language that you use, especially, and that you're telling people when they're doing things well and you're appreciating them, and you're using, I think they say there's a certain amount of appreciative and positive language you have to use to outweigh the negative language. So the Gottman's book is also great on relationship stuff.
Mhm.
But I realized just as you were talking, Alicia, that Gary Chapman's also written a book about love languages to do with for children.
Mm.
And I haven't read that
I
one. And I
haven't
just
either.
think that, the fact that, I'm now doing the parenting and learning all about it and loving learning all about it. Because, I coach parents and I coach them on how they cope as an individual within that, and then helping them to use mind, body, and manifestation so that they don't feel like crap all the time. But as well as that, I want to know all about more about more and more about the parenting stuff and conscious parenting and all of that. But I've never read the children's one. And I just think, that's got to be interesting, hasn't it? To think about your child's love language and how you can show them that they're really appreciated.
So, one of the very first blog posts that I wrote was ask your child their love language,
Oh,
because I had this amazing epiphany that my dad and I have a, an interesting relationship. We obviously we love one another. My dad is very intellectual and loves reading books, and he's a pastor and very involved in the church. And I, at 13 years old, decided that he didn't love me. And then
mm,
my mind collected all kinds of evidence that that was true.
yeah.
And when I started coaching, that's one of the things that I worked on first, not on purpose. Not, I didn't come to her and say, "Hey, I don't feel like my dad loves me, so fix me," or change my mind about that. But it was coming up, and my coach said, I want to encourage you to look for ways that your dad does love you. Look for evidence that he does love you. And so I expanded my awareness, I expanded that thought process, and I started looking for it. And I realized my dad was giving me words of affirmation by
Oh,
writing. He would write me a letter, basically inside my birthday card every year, that told me that he loved me. And I've started collecting them, and I have them in a binder that sits on my desk. And then I can't remember now, it might come to me, but there was a moment, there was a, maybe it was him, the way that he tucked me in at night. Because he used to come in and he'd tuck me in, and he'd go tuck him, tuck him, tuck him, tuck him, tuck him, right? And so and put me in a little burrito. And
oh,
and I'd forgotten about that. this is the one that it was. My dad would give me a Valentine's Day gift every Valentine's Day that I was not in a relationship, starting
Wow.
around 12 or 13 years old, that he would give me a, maybe it was even earlier, but I remember that time. And every time I was not in a relationship, he would give me a gift and for Valentine's Day. Um, and when I started opening this awareness and I remembered that, I thought we were just speaking different love languages.
Oh, so
And
much understanding.
and I
Yeah.
had and I told my brain that it was important for me to see the ways that my dad didn't love me. So obviously I didn't do that consciously, but that was the message that my brain was feeding me. And so when I realized that we were speaking different love languages, I went home and I asked my son, how do you feel the most loved? What does mom do that makes you feel the most loved? And he said, when you snuggle me. I remember
Oh,
thinking, well, crap, that's the thing that I do the least.
oh,
And so, and then I thought, well, that's great that I had this awareness about my dad and that I didn't repeat the pattern. And so now I made it a priority that in the morning I snuggle with my son. And
gorgeous.
I asked him a couple of months ago, and that was still his answer. So I'm re-asking and I'm reaffirming that
And,
is, and not
and
going off of assumptions.
that's gorgeous. And you're right, because it may change over time, but you're also just checking in. Is that still what you need? And in the same way you check in for him, you can maybe check in for yourself as well sometimes and say, are my love languages still the same, or have
Mm-hmm.
things changed? But I just love that you did that. I love that you asked him, what is it that I do that makes you feel really loved? That is beautiful.
Yeah.
And that closeness that you're going to bring doing that over, the years that are to come it's just wonderful.
Yeah,
I
I'm
also
really glad that I've done the stuff that I've done, and that I'm going to continue to learn the things that I'm going to continue to learn and evolve and change. Like it's so exciting to me that I want every mom to do what I'm
yeah,
doing with regards to personal development and evolving.
love it. Can I also ask, when you were reframing it and looking for the different way of seeing how your relationship with your dad had been, a lot of that is the neuroplasticity work of, you have certain brain connections, and they're, because you think the same thoughts over time, the myelin sheath on the brain connection gets thicker, and it means that you're more likely to think in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard about when people do that kind of work, they sometimes just do it as they're thinking, and they look for proofs in their head. And also people sometimes write it down. So they write down the proofs of the opposite thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered, practically when you were doing that kind of reconditioning of your brain, and you were rewiring all of it to say, look, there is the proof over here about how dad felt about you. Just practically, was there anything in particular that you did?
I think I did write it down. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was the assignment, was to write it down.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that was the big thing. I don't remember anything else
And
other
isn't it
yeah.
how something as simple as that, we think how, and in a way not simple, because it's like shaking up your whole way of seeing things, but
Mm-hmm.
just to write something down, that and do it on a regular basis, it not take much time, but it
Mm-hmm.
can actually shift things so dramatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also, so in my certification, we get trained on timeline therapy. And that the moment that I always go back to, not always, but 90% of the time, go back to this moment. And I actually thought about it when I said I wasn't born scared of heights. Um, when I was 4 or 5 years old, my brothers were climbing up on a jungle gym, and so I climbed up on the jungle gym right behind them, and then they jumped down, and I was at the top, and I'm, half a foot shorter than them, and I'm looking down, I'm like, I'm not jumping. And I sat on top of the jungle gym and cried until my dad came to get me. And when he came to get me, he said, "You got up there by yourself. How come you
Wow.
couldn't get back down?"
Yeah.
And that was a pivotal moment in my childhood, such that every memory is connected to that. Like, that's the moment.
Mm.
And I remember telling that story to my boyfriend. I used to not even be able to tell that story without crying. I was so attached to that story.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my boyfriend, and he goes, "What if he was just asking a question?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Well, that's not how I took it." And I'm pretty sure that there was a tone.
Mm-hmm.
But it also was like, yeah, what if he was just asking a question? And I actually, but the way that I took it was that I had disappointed him, that
Mm-hmm.
I was mostly just that disappointment. And then when I was like 26 years old when I found out he was afraid of heights. And I remembered that story, and I was so irritated
Oh my
that he
goodness.
shamed me for, I guess
Yeah.
shame is another
And
feeling.
part of that, he might have been triggered by the fact that
Right.
heights was a thing for him.
Yeah.
And this is it. We're also up against, as parents, all of the triggers that we have
Mhm.
based on stuff that maybe happened to us, 30 years ago or whatever.
Mhm.
Something's happened, something's triggered you, and then something that your child does just
Triggers you.
it just triggers it. And all that you can do then is have ways that you're able to calm yourself, to care
Mhm.
for yourself, to cope, because your brain goes out of regulation at those triggering points, even when you're doing the very, very best that you can. There's so much within the subconscious, within our past, that that can be triggered. And sometimes we even don't know why something's triggered us.
Right.
We don't know why something's affected us so much. And it might have been because, you were held to certain expectations, or
Right.
you had an event that happened that meant that this thing is going to affect you. My dog's going to bark. Sorry.
That's okay. Uh, I would imagine that my dad was channeling his dad in that moment from stories that I've heard about my grandpa. But is there
Yeah.
a piece of advice that you want to give to our moms?
Yeah. I think that sort of reflecting on the conversation that we've been having today, I think that there's a lot about the importance of just being really kind to yourself on this journey,
Mm-hmm.
because we often put the importance on that we're doing our best to be kind for other people. We're
Mm-hmm.
doing to be as kind as we can to our child through all the journey and the challenges that they're going through. But also, to help you to do that, the starting point is that self-kindness.
Yeah. Yep. And they will imitate what you are doing. And so you want them to be kind to themselves. So you have
Oh yeah.
to go first.
Yeah, even we talked about modeling how you talk about yourself, because they learn how to talk about themselves by how you talk about
Right.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned a couple of books. Is there
Oh,
one that stands out in particular that was super impactful to you on your parenting journey?
um, let me think.
I kind of sprung it on you.
On my whole journey, I think it would be the Finding Your Own North Star by Dr. Martha Beck. So I did my first coach training in 2013 with Dr. Martha Beck, and she
Okay.
talks a lot about dealing with change.
Yeah.
She talks about the change cycle and about the squares of the change cycle that you go through. And she basically helps you through whatever part of that change cycle you're on,
Mm-hmm.
about how you're going to cope with it and manage it. And I think that personally, I've been through a lot of change. We've moved a lot of times with my husband's work, and I went through the change cycle over and over again. You go through the change cycle when you become a mother. You go through the change cycle when your child goes to each new life stage. So dealing with change is a really big deal.
Yeah.
So I would say to anybody who wanted to get started off on this journey of really caring for themselves. She talks about the body compass as well, which is what you were saying that you're looking for. Does this feel like joy to me? So it brings in a lot of the ideas that we've talked about, and I think that that would be a wonderful place for anybody to head to take this further.
Awesome. Where can the listeners find you?
Sure. I'm at deborahchalk.com. So that's Deborah, and then chalk, CHALK. I have a free Facebook group called The Mind Body Answer. And I also offer a free meditation on my website, which is about releasing tension, which you imagine you do a body scan of your body on the way up. And then you imagine a golden elixir taking all the tension away on the way down. And for those frazzled days, or even any day, it's just a really lovely thing to be able to do for yourself.
Does it work on kids too?
Yes, it does. And I'll tell you how I've used it. So there was one night my daughter wasn't getting to sleep, and we did the same thing, but we did it with unicorn sparkles. So we had the body scan on the way up, and then you imagine a pitcher above your head, like a jug or a pitcher, and you imagine that the jug is full of unicorn sparkles, all rainbow colored. And then the rainbow colored unicorn sparkles go down through the body and take all the tension away, and then down through the ground. And she absolutely loved it. So yes, it does work for kids.
Awesome. I ask because he is very concerned with learning how to go from level 10 back to neutral, because he's got strong emotions and he's asking me for guidance, and I'm like, I don't know how to help you.
Some more ideas on that. So look up Brain Gym, and there's some exercises called PACE, PACE, and those brain exercises really help the brain to be regulated quickly.
Okay.
Also cross-body movements. So things like any sport or anything where you're putting one arm and a leg over to the other sides. Piano, the same way, or anything where you're using both hands. Playing a recorder or blowing through an instrument is also really regulating. So just those are just some ideas. So Brain Gym and the PACE exercises, cross-body movement, breathing exercises as well, and the piano, just some ideas, but there's lots that you can do to help your child and yourself be more regulated.
And you're saying Brain Gym, like GYM?
Yeah.
Brain Gym? Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely be checking that out.
Brain Gym, and then PACE, PACE. It has about 5 exercises that an adult or a child can do just to bring their brain back into regulation. And they work really well and really quickly.
That's exciting. Well, thank you so much for that, specifically for me, and for everything that you've poured into our listeners today. And thank you for joining.
It's been great. Thanks so much, Alicia.
Absolutely. So we'll have another episode of Imperfect Mommy next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Mommying. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. See you next time.